age to make a dhakr of?
No. It's not like leading prayers where you have to meet a certain requirement.
You have to be at a certain age to make a dhakr of.
We don't need to. Yeah, it's a little bit like so. Live streamed. And here. And
It's like all visible behind you.
yeah. I think that should be good. So we're on 228, right? Yeah. Okay. So one more, let's wait one more minute. I think people are going to start coming in, inshallah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Why did they change their windows?
It's easier for them to set up and take down. That's really what it comes
There
down
was
to.
a lot more people coming in the.
I know. They just go straight from there. So they need to make an announcement too. I think that plays a big role.
And it felt more convenient there, fewer people.
People actually like this room. They were saying they like this, prefer this room. Yeah. There's too many distractions in the other room. That's the only thing. Yeah. Walaikum assalam, rahmatullah.
Hamza's here as usual.
Alhamdulillah.
That question boy.
MashaAllah. You're two. You're number two, man. You ask good questions too.
That's true.
But we need you on the brother side. Please. If you could just, can somebody help you? Walaikum assalam. Very good. Not bad.
You speak Spanish fluently?
Really?
Sí, yo hablo mucho español.
MashaAllah. Hablo poquito español.
Ah. Incluso, eh.
No, yeah.
Thank you.
You feeling better? Well,
60%.
What happened?
for you.
Flu symptoms.
Oh, everyone has those these days.
Yeah, it's going around.
What did you get? Huh? Yeah, what was it? 6, right? Yeah. Last time I don't even remember one time we asked 6 questions. Questions.
The portable restrooms? No. For us,
Yeah,
they're actually really nice.
yeah.
I thought they were trying to trick us with executive bathrooms, but they're actually really nice. They're pretty good, man. I gotta give it to them, man. They did a good job.
Good for a trailer bath.
They're better than like airplane bathrooms, man. That's pretty good. Yeah, for a trailer bathroom, they're really nice.
Or on Everest first class.
So I don't travel Emirates first class, so I don't.
What's class in Qur'an? What Emirates?
Emirates, no, not connected to Quran. Emirates first class bathrooms versus ICOI porta potties. Hamza is trying to compare. So it's just not a fair comparison. I'm comparing economy class Emirates bathrooms.
Yeah, Muslims have so much money. Like
Alhamdulillah.
Emirates. And I'm making a new city in the Saudi, the indoor city.
Yeah. The wall.
Yeah, I can't say it's gonna all go wrong. People are trying to say it's not gonna work.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, all right, let's get started. All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ba'd. Make sure my camera should be on. Yeah, it is. Okay. All right, so we left off at verse 228. So we didn't finish the section last week. No, actually the week before. Last week I was sick. So where it left off at verse 228, we're still talking about divorce. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in 228, وَالْمُطَلَّقَاتُ يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوءٍ. So divorced women must wait for 3 monthly cycles. So what they mean by waiting for 3 monthly cycles, for what? Before they can eat, before they can drink. Well, you have to read in the meeting. It says before getting remarried. So if a woman wants to get remarried, she's going to wait for this period of time. And the reason is because that's the amount of time. There's a psychological reason and there's a physical reason. That's the amount of time where you can pretty much tell if there's pregnancy. If you get remarried, what's going to be the problem? The woman is pregnant and she doesn't recognize it and she gets remarried, she's with another husband, she could potentially not know whether the pregnancy, especially in those olden days, was from this husband or that husband. So there's a period of waiting, and this is called the iddah. Okay, this is the iddah period. So Allah prescribes this. وَلَا يَحِلُّ لَهُنَّ أَن يَكْتُمْنَ مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ فِي أَرْحَامِهِنَّ إِن كُنَّ يُؤْمِنَّ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. It is not allowed for them to conceal what Allah has created in their wombs, referring to pregnancy, or it could also be about lying about their cycle if they believe in Allah in the last day. Meaning if somebody truly believes in Allah in the last day, they would not do anything like concealing something like this. Now, normally, if you're lying, you don't need to say, if you're a believer, you should not lie if you truly believe in Allah on the last day. But look at the wording here very carefully. It says conceal. So somebody can simply say, well, I just didn't say it. I wasn't lying, but I was concealing the truth of something that maybe I was supposed to say, but I just didn't say it. Sometimes when you conceal something that needs to be told, it falls in the category of lying. Like, for example, in this case. So if a woman is divorced and she wants to get remarried and she's pregnant and she conceals it and she hides it, and then she gets remarried and then she's hoping that, she can attribute the child to the next husband, even if it's not, before all the DNA testing and all that stuff is there, that's a really big deal. You shouldn't do that. And a woman is lying about her cycle and she says, my iddah, my waiting period is over, so I'm ready to get remarried, because she's in a rush to get remarried. And she goes, yeah, it happened last month. I'm ready to get remarried. But it's not. That's a big deal as well. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying is, if you truly believe in Allah on the last day, you would not be concealing things like this. So very important not to lie ever, but to lie on something that's very significant. You should not lie on something like that too. وَبُعُولَتُهُنَّ أَحَقُّ بِرَدِّهِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ إِنْ أَرَادُوا إِصْلَاحًا. Their husbands reserve the right to take them back within that period if they desire reconciliation. So it's talking about the rules of divorce here. The rules of divorce, sadly, if I had to estimate, I would say that 97% or more of the Muslim population doesn't understand the rules of divorce correctly, right? And this is one of the rules that they don't understand, this right here. So that the husbands reserve the right to take them back within that period if they desire reconciliation, which means that we're talking about divorce, women who get through the status of divorce, what's called talaq. So marriage is very important in Islam, and divorce happens. And what's the average divorce rate in America today? Anyone? It's 50 to 60%. Yeah, 50 to 60%, and that's just in America. Now the question is, what is the Muslim divorce rate in America?
40%, 40, 50.
So the reality is, nobody knows, because we don't have data on that. There's not been any study. It's very hard to conduct a real study. Like if you survey 1,000 random Muslims across the country, does that give you real data? It's not going to give you any real data. So you cannot have that data ever, because when you go to, you'll find it in Google, people guessing this and guessing that. When you register a divorce in America, do they ask you for your religion? That's against the, that's against freedom of religion. That's against the Constitution. They cannot ask you for your religion when you do that. So they can't gather that data. Nobody can gather that data. So the number, we don't know for sure, but the number is probably close to the number or the standard across America. It may be slightly higher, it may be slightly lower, maybe it's half at least, but it's definitely not that far from whatever it is. So it's common and it happens. Right? And in the time of the Sahaba, in the time of the companions, there were a lot of divorces that used to happen. Right? So it's important to understand the rules of divorce here. So what's happening here, it's saying that if the husband issues a divorce, the husband has the right to take back that divorce within the period if they want to reconcile. So you can cancel a divorce basically. So issue a pronouncement of divorce, you're in a cooling off period. And if you want to retract that period, you want to retract that divorce, you can do so during the cooling off period. Now, this is one very, very simple rule that most Muslims don't know, that you can actually cancel a divorce within what's called the iddah period, that you can actually cancel it. And we're going to look at more rules for that. وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Women have rights like those of men. It's a verse connected to this verse, but it's a general principle. And I put the word equitably here, which basically it's saying that, well, wait a minute, you've just been explaining that men are going to issue the divorce, and then men have the right to retract that divorce. So, well, what if the woman says, I don't allow you to retract that divorce? Can he still retract the divorce?
No.
Yes, he can,
Well,
because he issued it in the first place, right? If a man says, I'm going to issue a divorce, and the woman says, no, I don't allow you to issue me a divorce, is he allowed to do it still?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's happening is you might be reading that and you say, well, wait a minute. Seems like the man has a lot of power in terms of, he can just issue this divorce. So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts this part of the verse right there, right after this. And he says, and the women will have rights like those of men. And this is bil ma'ruf. Like it means like customary, honorary, and equitably. The difference between equality and equity. Does anyone know the difference between equality and equity? Yes.
I think equality is like having the same exact right.
Yep.
Equitability is having the same amount of rights, but not the same exact.
Exactly. So not the exact same rights, but the same like amount or weighing, balancing out the rights and responsibilities, right? So that's very important for us to understand that not everything is the same, but it ends up being equitable. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning that, and he's going to explain where that comes in. وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةً. And it says, although men have a degree above them. So it just said that they have similar rights, right? And then it says, but men have a degree above them. So what does the degree refer to? This is one of those verses that a lot of people either use or misuse. And there's a lot of discussion on this. What is the degree referring to? The degree is referring to authority and responsibility, because with authority comes responsibility, and with responsibility comes a level of authority, right? And the problem is that people who don't understand that will be like, no, it's either authority on the one side or it's responsibility on the other side, and you'll have people insist on one translation over the other. But that's not the way things work. Whenever you have a level of authority over somebody, you have a level of responsibility towards them as well. So it's saying that they have a level of authority and responsibility above them. And what topic are we specifically talking about? This is not just like general across the board. This is in a specific topic. What's the topic? Marriage and divorce, right? So when it comes to marriage and divorce, Wallahu azizun hakim. Allah is mighty and wise. So why mention the word mighty in this verse here? Allah is mighty. He could have made any rules he wants to make. These are the rules that he made. And Allah is Hakim. He only makes rules that are good for people. So these are the rules, and Allah made them out of his wisdom. He could have made any rules he wants. He could have said, you know what? Once you issue one pronouncement of divorce, you cannot retract it, and you can never get remarried ever again, and you only get one chance. Or he could have made any rules that he wanted. But the rules, we're going to see some more in detail. The rules here are based on the wisdom of Allah, of what he knows to be good for society. And that is something extremely important. So a few points here. Some cultures, if you look at the history of cultures today around the world and in the past throughout the world. Some cultures make divorce too hard, and some cultures make divorce too easy. And Islam has really come to basically bring a balance between that. So if you want to see examples of where it's very easy, you can look at Judaism. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 1 through 3. It talks about how easy it is. If you don't like this, you don't like that, just divorce. Examples of making it too hard would be Christianity. If you look at Mark chapter 10, verses 9 to 11, you can look it up. I'm not going to go into detail because it's short. This is supposed to be easy tafsir class, right? This is the intro tafsir class. But the church, when they say till death do us part in the marriage ceremony, they really meant it. It's actually right there, the Gospel of Mark. It's part of the thing. It says when you get married, you will be together until you die, whether you like it or whether you don't like it. What happened was, this was in the Catholic Church. The Protestants, they said, we're going to make things much easier for people. The Catholic Church was too difficult. So we will allow divorce in one instance only. If you're cheating on the other spouse. The only time you're allowed to get divorced. Now, this was the original Protestant Reformation. And then later on, it just opened the door to everything. So what you have is, you have two extremes within cultures. If you look at Hinduism, divorce is not allowed. In fact, it used to be that when a husband passes away, what happens to the wife? Not only can she not get remarried, she can't live. She gets burnt alive they do cremation. So what happens is, they don't bury the body. They would cremate the body. They would burn the body into ashes. So what happens to a widow of a man? She gets burnt along with her husband because she's eternally connected to her. So when the Christian said, till death do us part, the Hindu said, no. Even with death, you still don't part. You both are going to be burnt together. One of you is dead and one of you is alive. It's called sati. And this was a practice that was very, very common in India. The British came and they tried to outlaw it. So you can look into that. So what happens is, you have some cultures make it too hard. Some cultures make it too easy. Islam is trying to bring the balance. Okay. Now, a few other things. The word cycle here, the 3 monthly cycles, right? Cycle, the word interesting is the word quru. The word comes from the Arabic qur. Now, some words in Arabic, they have two contradictory meanings. This is one of those words that has two opposite meanings. So qur can refer to the actual menstrual period. Qur can refer to the purity between two menstrual periods, which are just two opposites. So in Arabic, this is kind of like the word dhanna. The word dhanna has two meanings. Who speaks Arabic? Who knows what dhanna means? What does dhanna mean? To assume, right? When you assume something, it's negative connotation, which basically means like, you don't know what you're talking about, right? You're not even sure, you're assuming. Dhanna also means to be certain, have yaqeen. So two opposite meanings. How can you know which meaning it actually is, right? The same thing with qad. The word qad can have similar opposite meanings. La'alla can have opposite meanings. So you have words like that have two opposite meanings. And alhamdulillah, you were in the class when we covered this too. Nice. We'll take questions just in a moment, inshallah. All right. So what you have is this balance in divorce. You have a cooling off period, right? And modern law today, they have a cooling off period. So in many states, some states, they have like, you have to wait 45 days before you can get divorced because you guys are all mad and upset. We're not going to let it process. So we're going to stop the process from going through. So you have to wait this many days till you cool down. Some states have like 2 months. Some have 3 months. California has one of the longest in the entire country. Does anyone know what the cooling off period in California is? 6 months. A minimum is 6 months. They will not allow you to process a divorce in 6 months. So this idea of a cooling off period, this didn't exist in all the other religions. The idea of just having a cooling off period where everyone can just calm down and everything like that, the 3 months, approximately 3 months, came in from Islam. It's coming directly from the Qur'an. Let's see what else. Yeah, I'll skip some of that. Okay, so I'll open it up for questions, inshallah, because we're at the end of the section. Hamza, you have.
Yeah, is it always the man who has to issue divorce?
No, so that we're going to come to that, inshallah. So there's a woman is going to get a divorce through a process called khula, which is coming very soon, inshallah. Other questions? No other questions? All right. Then let's move to section 29. Yeah.
You know, when a divorce goes in a court in the United States, it gives you a cooling off period of 3 or 4 months, something like that.
6 months in California.
So, okay, 6 months, and this is same as it does.
No.
After 6 months, they have to wait for the.
Oh, okay. So I think what you're asking is, let's say you're in California and you have a 6-month cooling off period in California and you're filing divorce, and then Islamic divorce is like approximately 2.5, 3 months in the period. So what do? Do you have to wait or something like that? Well, what you want to do ideally is you want to time the end of the iddah to be the end of the legal divorce at the same time.
Oh.
So what you do is if you're already going through paperwork, whatever it is, you try to kind of want to time the divorce like 3 months, the Islamic talaq divorce, 3 months into the legal divorce, so that they both conclude around the same time. The problem is 6 months in California is the minimum. Sometimes it goes 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. It can take 6 years to actually get divorced if there's a big legal battle about the assets. I've seen cases of 6 and 7 years in our Muslim community. Yeah. So, and they're still going on, like in the 6th year, something like that. Okay, so section 29. Allah says, "At-talaqu marratan." Divorce can be twice. So now we're talking about something else. We're talking about, wait a minute, there's a cooling off period for divorce. There's a retraction period for divorce. There's a waiting period before remarriage. And then there's this idea of 2 divorces. So what does that mean? At-talaqu marratan. Divorce can be twice. فَإِمْسَاكُمْ بِمَعْرُوفٍ أَوْ تَسْرِيحٌ بِإِحْسَانٍ. Then retain with honor or separate kindly. Meaning, then retain your wife with honor or separate from her with kindness. This talaq or divorce that we're talking about is when the man is initiating the divorce or the talaq here. So this is a man basically saying, well, I issued pronouncement of talaq. I said divorce to my wife, and then what happened? I retracted. Maybe 1 day later, maybe 75 days later, I retracted. Their marriage continues. 3 years later, says, no, nothing has changed. Issue a divorce again. And then 45 days later, say, no, you know what? Let's try to make this work again. Cancel that divorce again. So now how many times has there been divorce throughout this entire marriage? We got 2 now. Over a period of how many years?
3.
3 years, exactly. So now let's say 7 years later, he said, you know what, this time I'm going through with it, right? And if he makes the pronouncement for the 3rd time, right, he needs to think very carefully, because the Qur'an says, at-talaqu marratan, divorce can be 2 times. If you issue a 3rd one, there is no more retraction. That's what it means. So by divorce is twice, meaning you cannot retract the divorce more than twice when you're married to a woman. So you have to make up your mind, and you have to say, once you've issued 2 pronouncements of divorce, doesn't matter over how long of a period, then you need to make a decision. You need to never utter the pronouncement again, or you need to utter it, and finally, but you cannot cancel it anymore. Now you don't, you cannot take it back no matter what. So decide, either you stay married or you separate, and look at the wording here, or separate bi-ihsan, meaning divorce with kindness, with honor, in a nice way. So divorce is usually, it's not a nice thing, right? It's emotional. It's it depending on who wants to get out. But there is, any type of relationship that you end, if you end a friendship, it's not going to be pretty for one side or maybe both sides. If you end a job and you decide to leave your company, or if your company decides to lay you off, for one or both sides, it's not going to be pretty, right? Because there's a connection there, right? So the fact that Allah is saying that even when you do something like this, you do it with ihsan. You do it in the nicest of ways. You do it in the best of ways, with excellence, with kindness. That's the way it needs to be done, right? So, yeah, if you're gonna do it, it should be done properly. ولا يحل لكم أن تأخذوا مم ولا يحل لكم أن تأخذوا مما آتيتموهن شيئا إلا أن يخافا ألا يقيما حدود الله. It is not lawful for you to take back anything given to them. Okay, so now here's the important thing here. So let me read in the parentheses. It's not lawful for you. Here it's talking to husbands. So you husbands are not allowed to take back anything, meaning the dowry, the dower, the mahr, the bridal gift that was given. When you get married, you give a bridal gift. It could be $1,000, it could be $5,000, it could be $20,000, depending. It could be a large amount. So if you're getting divorced, you're not allowed to take back anything from that mahr, that bridal gift that you had given to your wives. Why? Because you are the one who's initiating the divorce. You're initiating the talaq. If you were able to do that, imagine what would happen. Guy gets married, says, no worries, I'm going to give you $30,000 bridal gift. And then after like 6 months, goes, you know what? I'm tired of you. Give me my $30,000 back and I'm out of here. So it's like an Amazon full refund. You know, you return back like a product that, you know, you've already, you know, utilized or whatever it is. This is not going to be allowed. So it says you're not allowed to do that. And then it says, unless, except if the couple fears that they will not be able to keep within the limits of Allah. Right. So now we're talking about the second process of what's called khula, where a woman is going to initiate the divorce, meaning that you will not be able to fulfill the rights, the responsibilities, and give the rights to the person, and this is not working out. So now we're going to have something of a returning of part of the bridal gift in order to get out of the marriage. فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا يُقِيمَا حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا فِيمَا افْتَدَتْ بِهِ. So if you, and the scholars have read in like, meaning the family or the leaders or the people who are making the detailed code of laws for a society and a community. If you fear that they will not be able to keep within the limits of Allah, then there is no blame if the wife compensates the husband for it. It refers to divorce. So the wife can compensate the husband to obtain a divorce by returning all or part of her bridal gift that she was given, right? So why is this important too? So I give you the opposite scenario. I gave you the scenario of guy marries, gives this $30,000 thing, and then all of a sudden, 6 months later, no, I'm out, give me my money back. Well, there will be a woman who would do the same thing. She says, I want to get married. This guy's very wealthy, very successful. I want $50,000. The guy's like, oh, she's so beautiful, and you know, this is going to be great. And he gets married, and then immediately, 1 month later, she's like, see ya. She goes and marries somebody else, gets another $50,000, and you'd be surprised this actually happened. So in Texas, there was a Muslim sister going around doing exactly this. Unfortunately, she got a lot of money, right? Shouldn't happen. This is really bad, right? So this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put these regulations in place for a reason, so that nobody's going to be exploited on either side. So it says, if she wants to get out of the marriage, regardless if it's been a month or if it's been 6 months or it's been 6 years or whatever it is, he said there's no blame. There's nothing wrong with if a woman wants to do this. If she says, I want to get out of this marriage, it's not working out for me, right? And she has some, you know, even some decent reason, like for no reason whatsoever, just we're not compatible or whatever it is, then what is she going to do? She's going to compensate the husband back to obtain this release from the marriage, which is called khula, right? So that's the process of women getting out of marriage. Now, there's a few things here. And I get called there's not a single week that doesn't go by where I don't get calls about these issues in particular. Like literally not a single, all documented. I have like 6 years of documentation of my appointments. Every single week, you're going to find questions like this. So one of them is that a woman doesn't know that if she wants to get out of a marriage, she can get out of a marriage. So a man will be like, you know what? Nope. If I decide not to, let you out of the marriage, then I am the only one who's allowed to do talaq. You cannot, get khula. So this is a problem number one. Problem number two is that the husband will sometimes try to take more money than the amount of dowry that was given. So the guy will say, for example, okay, you don't like me, you don't like my behavior, you don't like making, coffee for me or whatever it is, fine. You can get out of the marriage. It's just going to cost you $300,000. You're like, what? Your bridal gift was $5,000. Where does $300,000 come in? So that's what it's going to cost you if you want to pay me off, right? And this is why the scholars, they look at this verse and they say, what is it referring to? It's referring to the original bridal gift that was given to her. So the scholars say a man should not ask for more money than the entire amount of the dowry that was given to her. They could negotiate on 50%. They could negotiate on 75%. If the guy's really nice, he could be like, you know what? 0%, I don't need any of that money back. You keep that and we'll move on, with our life. So there's that. تِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ فَلَا تَعْتَدُوهَا. These are the limits set by Allah, so do not cross them. Allah is like very clear. He's like, these are the limits I'm putting in place. Don't break these rules. These rules are for your own good. وَمَن يَتَعَدَّ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Whoever crosses the limits of Allah are the oppressors. Meaning these are the true oppressors. So here we learn a few things. Number one, in the time of the period of ignorance before Islam came, in Arab society, in pagan Arab society, there was no limit to a divorce. So you can say, I divorce you, and then take it back. I divorce you again, I take it back. Every single day, pronounce divorce, and you just keep taking it back, and there's no limit. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set a limit to prevent husbands from abusing that authority or that right that they have, so that they're not getting into the level of making into a joke or a play or something like that. There are more rules in Surah Al-Talaq about some of these things, but that's chapter 65. So if you stick around, and if I stick around to ICOI, in about maybe 9 years, we will get to the tafsir of those verses, inshallah ta'ala. All right. And oh yeah, one more really, really important thing. Okay, this is so many Muslims don't know this. Again, it's like, maybe I said 97%. This one's probably like 98%. It's like 1 more percent above. Is that divorce can be twice. So if somebody pronounces divorce, doesn't retract the divorce, the waiting period ends, and then 1 year later passes, none of them get remarried, and they're like, we're both single and we're just kind of lonely. Can we get remarried? Most Muslims will say, nope, not allowed to get remarried, because you have to go marry somebody else and then you can get remarried. And the answer is no. This is talaqu marratan. If one divorce took place and the waiting period finished and you're not husband and wife anymore, you can still go ahead and get remarried, because there were never 3 pronouncements of divorce in your marriage. So it's very important to not jump the gun and play this jump to the 3 divorce card and say, I know I'm never going to change my mind. You're basically trying to overrule the cooling period that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in place for you. So be very cautious about that and understand. All right, next verse. فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا فَلَا تَحِلُّ لَهُ مِن بَعْدُ حَتَّى تَنكِحَ زَوْجًا غَيْرَهُ. This is where they get it from. So if he, meaning the husband, divorces her, the wife, for the 3rd time, so it's talking about the 3rd divorce, then it's not lawful for her to be his wife unless she has married another man. Okay, unless she's married somebody else. So this is serious. So if you've done 3 pronouncements of divorce, they cannot get remarried again. And if they want to get remarried again, then if the ex-wife marries another man, and then the divorce takes place, and then you say, okay, now we can get back together, you're allowed to do that. So if you've genuinely moved on from the first husband, married somebody else, and then, which is quite rare, get out of that. And then you say, okay, now I'm willing to get remarried. فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا أَن يَتَرَاجَعَا إِن ظَنَّا أَن يُقِيمَا حُدُودَ اللَّهِ. Then if he, meaning the second husband, divorces the first ex-wife, her, it would not be wrong for them to get remarried if they think, meaning this time it's probable, that they will now be able to maintain the limits of Allah, meaning have a good relationship and be nice to each other and try to, get things done, fulfill the rights, fulfill the responsibilities and all of those things. Then it's allowed for them to get remarried. What's important here is this little tidbit that I put in here. So unless she is married another man and genuinely moved on from the first husband, there's something called halala in some Muslim countries. Who's heard of halala before? Raise your hand. Uncle has heard of it. Okay. So who's heard the word halal?
Halal.
Okay, heard halal, right? Halal means allowed. Okay. So halala is not halal, but people think it's halal. Halala is when you're trying to play a trick. And what you're doing is you basically go and you say, well, there's a married couple and they got divorced 3 times. And Allah says very clearly in the Qur'an, they're not allowed to get remarried unless she goes and marries somebody else. So what does she do? She goes and grabs some random person, says, okay, we're going to get married for 1 minute and then we're going to get divorced so that I can go and I can remarry my first husband. This is what happens.
Stop for long.
So this is a game, right? You're trying to play a game with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is haram. All right. So halala is haram. I'm writing an article on that. So it's called halala is haram, basically. So it's very important to understand you can't play tricks, you can't play games with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like this, right? Like when you're paying your zakah, right? If you have $10,000 and you've had it for 1 lunar year, right? From Ramadan the 1st to Ramadan the 1st, you have to pay zakah on $10,000. What if somebody comes along and says, you know what I'm going to do? 1 day before Ramadan, I'm going to gift my brother $10,000 and tell him, can you gift it back to me tomorrow? And he gives it back to you tomorrow. I did not have the money for 354 days, 1 lunar year. I had it for 353 days, and therefore I don't need to pay zakah.
No, 364, isn't it? Because
It's a lunar year, 354 days.
Wow.
Minus 1, right? So that's a trick. So you try to play tricks with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not going to work, right? And sadly, there are people who do this, and there's actually services in some countries where this person is going to be like, I'm the halala guy. You come to me if you need this service done, and they pay for it. It's ridiculous. So this should not be happening. And sadly, people, do some weird things and they think that they can somehow get around this. You cannot get around the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah says, وَتِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ يُبَيِّنُهَا لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ. These are the limits set by Allah, which He makes clear for people who know. These are the limits. These are the halal and haram. Don't try to play around with them. Don't try and get around them. And make sure you don't get stuck into doing something that you're going to regret. Because one of the most common things is that people end up doing 3 divorces and then they regret. They say, what can we do about it? Right? How can we somehow fix this problem? If halal is haram, then what do we do? Say, well, you should have thought about that before you did 3 divorces. You should have thought very carefully and very cautiously, because Allah put a limit on that. The last verse for today. وَإِذَا طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ فَبَلَغْنَ أَجَلَهُنَّ فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ أَوْ سَرِّحُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ. If you divorce women and they almost reach the end of their waiting period, then decide whether to keep them honorably or let them go kindly or honorably. So it's basically saying if you pronounce 1 or 2 divorce pronouncements and the period is about to end, the 3 menstrual periods are about to end, then you need to make up your mind and make a decision. Either you keep them or you let them go, and both of them are going to be done with honor. They have to be done with kindness. They have to be done in a nice, proper manner. وَلَا تُمْسِكُوهُنَّ ضِرَارًا لِتَعْتَدُوا. Do not keep them just to harm them and take advantage of them. So Allah is making it very clear that if any man says, oh, okay, you know what, I don't really like you. I don't really want to be married to you. I'm just going to keep you around so that you get stuck. You can have a miserable life, and I'm a man, I can take a second wife as well. So you're just going to be like on the side. And this is what men used to do in Arabian society if they want to harm their wife. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying is, you better not do that. You're not here to take advantage of your wife and keep them around for absolutely no reason. Now, unfortunately, this is a common practice as well. So what ends up happening is that there are people who the marriage is completely broken down, completely dysfunctional. They don't sleep in the same bed. They don't talk to each other. It's been 5 years going on like this. And yet the guy's like, I'm not going to divorce you, and I'm not going to accept the khula from you. Even if you give me $1 million, I'm still not going to accept the khula release from you. What do you do? Well, number one, this is haram. This should be enough for people who have any level of, faith in Allah to not do something like this. But if you can't, and the person is refusing to accept khula, and he's refusing to pronounce talaq, and the marriage is completely broken down, it's not getting any better no matter what, then what you do is you go to a Muslim judge or somebody who's acting in the role of a Muslim judge, and they will nullify the marriage, or they will make a forced pronouncement of talaq. And this used to happen. So if a man does something like this, a woman goes, okay, you're not accepting any amount for khula, I'm going to take you to the Muslim court. Goes in front of a Muslim judge. The Muslim judge will listen and say, what's the problem? Yeah, we have marriage is broken down. We don't talk to each other, this, that. And he says, okay, explain why are you doing this? If he has no good explanation, he will issue a forced talaq to the woman. And he could have gotten some money back, but he gets nothing back because he forced talaq, not forced khula. So there's always a way to get out of a marriage. Whoever does that has certainly wronged his own soul. Anyone who tries to keep women stuck with no good reason whatsoever, they've wronged their own soul. Not only have you wronged her, you've actually wronged yourself by doing something like this. وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا آيَاتِ اللَّهِ هُزُوًا. Do not take Allah's revelations as a joke. Very strong wording here. Don't play around. This is not a joke. Allah is not making these rules so that you can play around with them. واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم وما أنزل عليكم من الكتاب والحكمة يعظكم به. Remember Allah's favor on you and that He revealed the book and the wisdom. Wisdom, the hikmah, refers to the sunnah, the way of the Prophet, peace be upon him. He revealed all that to warn you. He gave you all this so that you can follow it and so that you can get a warning that, hey, you better follow it properly and you better not play around with these rules. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. Be mindful of Allah and know that Allah has knowledge of all things. Okay, questions? Yes, Hamza.
So I actually have one question, but I have 3 questions that I had earlier that I want to just confirm the answer. So my first thing I want to clarify is a man does not always have to be the person who issues a divorce.
Correct. A man does not always have to be the person who issues a divorce. The woman can issue a khula.
Okay. And second, if a man is not letting his wife get divorced, the woman should go to a Muslim judge, right?
Correct. A Muslim woman goes to a Muslim judge, yes, or somebody who acts as the judge. So in the absence of a Muslim, like an Islamic country, they can go to a tribunal of scholars who will act as the judge, and they can nullify that marriage.
Okay. And what if after 2 divorces, a man wants to do a 3rd divorce? So he can't do that, or his previous wife needs to get married to somebody else and then divorce him, and then they can be divorced, and then they can get remarried again, right?
Okay, so you're saying that if a man is pronounced 2 divorces, I think you were saying first, can he issue a 3rd one? He can, but then they can't get remarried. He can't retract that, and they can't get remarried.
Okay. And my first question is, my last question is there a minimum time between like the first day of marriage and the first divorce? Is there like a minimum time?
Oh, is there a minimum time of the first day of marriage and the first divorce? No, there's no minimum time.
No minimum.
I've actually seen divorces on the same day.
Really?
Yeah, same day.
Still really long.
Same day, yeah, same day.
Really?
And sometimes within an hour or two.
How?
what?
Yeah. Huh?
Over what?
Over what? Yeah, so what happens? The marriage happens, and then like right when they go and a fight takes place, like something that happened, like you should have done it this way. Why were you sitting over there? And you'd be like, what's wrong with me sitting over there? Your father told me to sit over there. No, my father told you to sit over there. You get into an argument within 1 hour, it's done.
Well, it's gonna happen sooner or later.
It was gonna, yes, it was gonna happen later, exactly. Better on the same day.
There's no sort of time to only get married again, right? But in the,
Meaning there's a waiting period before she can get remarried. Yeah, so there's the 3 periods, yes.
but here the period is longer. So if you would want to divorce, how would you go with the son amount, not one country?
Not understanding exactly.
You missed the 6 months period, cooling period in California versus the 3 months.
Oh, you're talking about in Cal, if you apply the California law? Oh, okay. So, so let's say somebody gets divorced and there's a 3-month cooling off period approximately in Islam. There's a 6-month period in California. You're saying that if the cooling period in California has not expired and she wants to get remarried, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where it becomes tricky. So technically, Islamically, you can get remarried. So if your Islamic nikah contract is done, you can get re-nikahd, right? But you cannot get legally married in California. So, and you say, well, you know, this is what happens, right? So for the people, this is a big problem that you brought up. So the people who are stuck for a 6-year divorce, legally, they cannot get remarried for 6 years. Now imagine people are like, I want to get remarried. Why do I have to wait 6 years to get remarried? Like that really sucks. Like, if they want to get remarried, why should I have to wait that long? So legally, they cannot register a new marriage in the state of California until that is done. And if it takes 6 years, you got to wait 6 years. Are you allowed to have a girlfriend? In Islam, no. In California, can you have a girlfriend?
Yes.
Sure. Can you have 5? Sure. It's not against the law. Like no one's going to do anything about it, right? So this is actually unfair, is that you can't get remarried, but you can get re-girlfriended, re-boyfriended, re-this. You could have as many relationships as you want. In Islam, you can't have a relationship outside of marriage. So can you get a nikah even though it's not going to be registered in the state of California? If you separate out what a marriage is and what a nikah is, and I'm using the Arabic word on purpose, the answer is yes, you can do it, and you can legally do it. And I've checked with 3 law firms to confirm that as long as you're careful and you say this is a spiritual contract that we're entering into, religious spirit, you use the word spiritual, people understand that more. This is a spiritual contract that we're entering into, valid in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So yes, you can do that. Right. Yeah.
2 questions kind of add to this question. First of all, if the divorce was like filed for 6 years, like you said, who would be taking care of the woman at that time? Or
Taking care of who?
the person who got divorced.
So usually when a divorce goes on like that long, the couple are not living with each other, and they usually don't have much interaction with one another. So you mean in terms of like financially, who's taking care of? They're separate.
Really?
Yeah, they're separate.
And isn't there freedom of religion? Like shouldn't that shouldn't that be a priority in the government's eyes?
So the government should have they have a freedom of religion clause. Sometimes it's applied. It's not applied 100% across the board for whatever reasons, but you're right that this is a problem within the law.
So would it be like a case by case thing, or would it be a general rule?
In terms of how we should solve it as Muslims, or in terms of how the government should solve it?
In terms of the government putting religion as a priority, what the religion says about it.
So in terms of us, we solve it on a case by case basis. In terms of the government, they need some reform. So
So, because the equality, like, if the women were to give the khula, she asked for khula. What is the cooling period for a woman looks like? So that it's the one, right? What is that look like?
So scholars have differed on what the cooling period for idda is. And they said either it's the same as talaq, same as divorce, or they said it's 1 month. I go with the opinion that's the same as talaq.
For the 3 cycles.
3 cycles. Yeah. Yes.
Excuse me, it's my understanding that if, when Muslims get married, that they can put into their, like, a legal clause, if you will, that they're going to abide by the Islamic law. So
Yes.
that they wouldn't have to wait. They can put it in a legal clause that's upheld within the American courts.
No,
Saying they can't.
no,
do
they
that,
can't. No, they can't.
to say that they.
No. So
have
it's
to wait.
in terms of like to shorten the waiting period in California.
If they, when they get married,
Yes. When they get married, if they say we want to have a religious clause, our religion is going to dictate, the divorce proceedings and things like that in case it happens, in order to shorten the waiting period. Is that what you mean for the divorce?
I mean, yeah, within from the establishment of American law, they can say they are going to go by American law
Okay, so
when they get married.
got it. So here's the thing. The way that it works is if you register your marriage in California or any other state as a marriage,
Uh-huh.
the marriage and family court will have jurisdiction and control over what happens if the marriage breaks down. There's a second option, and that is instead of registering it as a marriage, you register it as a no nuptial agreement. You say this is a non-marriage cohabitation agreement between us, and you put whatever clauses you want in there, and it functions almost like a marriage, but then the civil court will have jurisdiction, not the family court.
Mm,
So there's a lot less rules that will apply. So what a lot of people are doing now, a lot of non-Muslims even, they're doing cohabitation or no nuptial agreements. There's a fantastic article by Ahmed Sheikh. He wrote an article called No Nuptial Agreements and like Islamic, whatever. So it's becoming a little bit more common, but it's still not that common because there's pros and cons of it. But yeah, if you register a marriage, the marriage court will override anything. They have 100% jurisdiction over your marriage contract. They can even cancel whatever you write. So they can cancel out prenuptial agreements.
So you can't stipulate.
You can't stipulate much because the whatever rules they have in place, it'll override whatever else is there.
Interesting.
So you can stipulate some things, but it can get overridden.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
A man pronounces divorce and forms as may fully period, but are they considered still legally married? Can they still live together?
So when you use the word legally, are you asking American legally or Islamic legally? Okay. So your question is if they filed for divorce, but there's no talaq, can they still live together?
No, if the man has pronounced.
If the man is pronounced talaq and the woman is in the waiting period still, can they live together? Yes, they're supposed to live together.
Yeah.
Until the iddah ends. Then they're not allowed to live together anymore because then the divorce is finalized.
You mentioned halala. Usually in Pakistan is very done that.
I know.
But,
May Allah guide that.
but then the halala marriage is not even consummated. That's not even legal, right? That's not legal according to Islam.
According to Islam, it's haram. Halala is haram.
And so what are the reasons acceptable by Islam for divorce?
The reasons for divorce acceptable by Islam, there's thousands of them.
Like not having children.
No, so the thing is, there should be a good reason. There should be a good reason to end a marriage. Good reason is not like Christianity, good reason of cheating or something like that. If the marriage is causing more problems, things are just generally not working out, and there are more cons than there are pros in the marriage, that's a sufficient enough reason to end the marriage. Now, how do you weigh that? It's a case-by-case basis. Somebody's going to be like, you know what? I am traumatized by the cap being off of the toothpaste every single day. I cannot function like this anymore, and I must end this marriage, right? So maybe some, that's not the best reason to end the marriage, but someone's gonna just go crazy like that. And then there's somebody else who says, you know what? Oh, this person is taking on debt, nonstop taking on debt. And, we can't have stability in this household. And I don't know what's going to happen for my retirement, what's going to happen for my kids, and how they're going to get into college and all that stuff. I don't think this guy's financial track or this woman's financial track is moving in the right direction. We need to get out of this marriage because it doesn't seem like it has a good, trajectory. That's a valid reason to end the marriage. So it's really, really on a case-by-case basis. And you can't really put a list of things these are good reasons, these are bad reasons, right? Because there's usually more than one thing that's causing issues within the marriage.
This marriage issue that you're saying, the spending issue.
Yeah.
The women tend to spend more generally, more liberally.
Do women tend to spend more generally? That's what you're positing?
Yeah.
You're saying that? I've seen both extremes. And I see them on a regular basis.
Okay, what if the woman has spent a meher amount?
Okay.
And then she asks for khula. She won't have the money to.
Most women have a ton of jewelry, like especially you talk about Pakistan, India, right? They're usually like loaded with like a bunch of jewelry in a safe deposit box, more than usually their husband is saving up. So that's usually not a concern. But if she doesn't have the money, then she can either get it from family and friends, and if she can't, then he shouldn't take anything, right? Like shouldn't ask for it. He shouldn't ask for something she can't give. This is not like a fundraiser to like raise money to get out of marriage, right? If she has the money, then she can give it up. If she doesn't have the money, she doesn't have to give it up.
But she's asking for khula. She's trying to refund his,
If she has the money, if she doesn't have the money, it's different. Okay, inshallah. All right, we'll leave it at that. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. See you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.